Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video on Bite of Geek. Today, well, I'm sharing 5 of my realities of Home Assistant, the things that I've come across as I've started back using Home Assistant as part of my smart home system. So let's check them out. So first up, and I just want to say this video is not meant to be some kind of bashing video on Home Assistant. I think Home Assistant is a fantastic system, for beginners and advanced users alike. Yes, there are some flaws in it, but there are just as many, if not plenty more, fantastic features in it. And obviously, it's built by a community and all the developers behind it, and you've just got to give them a round of applause for the amount of effort that they are putting into Home Assistant to bring this basically free of charge for people. First of all, I guess this is my number one thing really. Home Assistant, the barrier to entry on Home Assistant I think is really, really low. It can be quite high, but you can put Home Assistant on a Raspberry Pi. You can get it set up really, really quickly. You could go down the route that I have done and go and put it on an Intel NUC. It can be a little bit more complicated. You could put it on an old PC that you've got lying around if you wanted to reuse that. It doesn't need anything super fantastic to run. You could stick it in a virtual machine, a Docker container, something like that. So it's like it's something which is available for everybody. Really, I think is the key message there. And once you've got it up and running, which is not a long process, it's probably less than an hour to get going with it. That kind of out of the box experience at the end of it. If you've got your smart devices connected in your house all ready to go, then Home Assistant will pretty much find most of the standard smart devices and give you a nice dashboard that you can use at the end of it. And I think that's really, really clever. When you think about how a lot of smart devices you've got to do pairing and all that kind of stuff. For Home Assistant to come out and basically after an installation have a nice dashboard, albeit basic, but it is functional. You can control your devices with it. I think that makes it just such a good starting point for people who want to play around with Home Assistant. Now, this is really one of my frustrations with Home Assistant, and just taking that previous comment about the fact that you end up with this dashboard that you can start playing around with your devices on. Well, what happens if you want to kind of change that look and feel of the dashboard? For me, the UI designer, the dashboard designer really is probably one of the weak points in Home Assistant. I've got this weather card here that I'm trying to move around, and I know the developers aren't concentrating and focusing on this area of the system at the moment, and there are other options. There's things like Dwayne's dashboard that you can install, which will give you something a little bit prettier, as it were. But certainly, it's just you click on these up and down arrows, and cards sometimes go where you want them to go and sometimes don't. As a user interface for an end user to use, and this is the way that Home Assistant are wanting users to go. They're driving more and more of the configuration and control through front end side of things. I think the actual dashboard editing really does need a bit of an overhaul. Some way to be able to drag and drop things around would be obviously the ideal, perfect scenario. So once you've got things set up and you start playing around with your dashboard and you start playing around with your devices and you're adding in those additional things and you're playing around with the plugins and add-ons and all that kind of stuff, you very, very quickly find yourself being thrown into the depths of the Home Assistant forums to go searching and hunting for information. You follow things down a trail only to find that actually that was something from 2 years ago, and unfortunately now it's not really the supported way of doing things, and you really need to be able to understand how to refactor that and use it the correct way. You know, you find yourself on Reddit, you find yourself on people's personal blogs, desperately searching for that information. Inevitably you will find it, but it's just something that isn't quick. You know, you can spend hours, if not days sometimes, trying to find a way of being able to do something. And yeah, I think it's one of those things that, you know, the community is great. They will try and help people a lot. So, you know, I've seen various videos where people talk about the Home Assistant kind of like community on the forums, and they can be a little bit challenging sometimes. But that's because, you know, people probably just rock up to the forums and just, you know, I've not really, you know, I've copied and pasted some YAML from somebody's website. I can't get it working, and I'm not prepared to do a little bit of research myself. You know, and that's what frustrates people. But you know, you do find that you will spend an awful lot of time searching through these forums, and you know, this is how you get the best out of Home Assistant, I suppose. You know, in your devices that you're connecting to Home Assistant, but I think it is something you very much need to be prepared for spending part of your life doing that from this day forward, as you've got your Home Assistant installation up and running. So I mentioned a little earlier about how the Home Assistant developers were kind of pushing stuff now towards the user interface side of things for people to be able to edit and control things via that. That's all well and good, and it works up to a certain point, but before too long you are going to find yourself talking to people about YAML, you know, and Python and things like that. You know, so you know, you will be separating out all these all your configurations into YAML files and setting up automations and you know, your sensors and your templates, all those kinds of things. Yeah, it would be a whole different thing that, you know, really did seem relatively straightforward on a user interface, and now you need to deal with YAML files, and you need to be able to deal with YAML files and the special indentation that those YAML files require that you have in order to have a valid configuration. You know, you will be validating your config and restarting Home Assistant in order to test all these things out. And again, you know, this is where the barrier for entry on this, for me, I think, you know, it starts off really, really low, but then ramps up relatively quickly. You know, this is where you're trawling through the forums and Reddit and things like that, you know, and you end up creating a lot of these things. The YAML files are exceptionally powerful. You can do an awful lot with them. You know, the separation is fantastic, but you know, it really is. You know, one of the realities of Home Assistant is that inevitably you will end up pretty much moving everything yourself over to YAML files. And finally, my fifth reality of Home Assistant. I'm sure there's an awful lot more. You know, drop them down below in the comments if you've got any more realities of Home Assistant. But for me, I think, you know, and I've touched on this a little bit in the other ones, it really will consume your life. Hours will just disappear whilst you are sat at your computer as you are trying things out, typing in YAML. You know, you buy more smart devices, you want to get them hooked up, you want to create these special automations, and you know, you will spend an awful lot of time doing that. You know, if you're married, you've got a partner or whatever, they're going to get extremely frustrated that, you know, you're not spending time with them, the family or whatever. But ultimately, off the back of this, you should end up with a very, very nice, well-defined and configured smart home system running under Home Assistant. So there you go, guys. Those are my 5 realities of Home Assistant. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Obviously meant to be a little bit of a jokey video, and you know, some serious things in there. But yeah, love to know your thoughts, you know, some of the challenges you faced with Home Assistant. Drop them down below in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.